you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a quick question. And that question is, how are you currently generating business? And if I had to take a stab at this, I would say it's most likely one of or a combination of referrals, partnerships, and networking. But outside of that, what have you tried in the last year or two that's actually worked consistently? Consistently being the key word here. If you struggle to answer that question, it might be because traditional forms of marketing just don't work for you. And there is a reason for that. We've entered into something new called the creator economy. Does it sound familiar at all? If not, stick around because you're going to learn a thing or two. Translated, it's a system that rewards content ideas from founder-led brands. Now, what does this look like? This looks like everything that you've seen before. Courses, toolkits, masterminds, paid programs, subscription models. And interestingly, very interestingly, these digital products represent 11% of a $290 billion industry. That's a billion with a B. That has spiked in popularity over the last 2 years in particular. In fact, a couple examples here. Online courses make up about 40% of that market, or $2.8 billion, and templates and digital assets make up about 24%, or about $7.7 billion. That catches your attention, right? But let's dial back for a minute here. Why is this relevant to you? Especially if you're in industries like law or finance or anything else that's like really, really trust heavy, where you maybe do get a lot of referrals for your business. 2 words: growth opportunity. It allows you to future-proof your business by productizing your intellectual property or your expertise. You can become proactive with your sales. You can diversify your revenue channels. It protects you from any AI disruptions. I don't know what your thoughts or feelings are about AI, but particularly in B2B service-based businesses, it can be a little bit touchy. And then finally, it's more income for less of your time because it's all digital, it's all electronic. That means it's scalable. We like scalable. And in my opinion, using these kinds of tools like courses, like toolkits, like all that stuff is a really good way to educate people. And in my personal opinion, education is one of the most underutilized approaches to selling in high trust industries like law or finance. So let's talk a little bit more about what this means for you. I'm going to break this video down into 3 parts. We're going to talk about why, we're going to talk about what, and we're going to talk about how, and then wrap everything up so that you leave this video hopefully not feeling overwhelmed, but very, very informed. Let's start with why. Why is this important? Why is this worth considering? Why is this even worth doing? It's because of economic viability. Now, it's no surprise that businesses are implementing AI everywhere, and I mean everywhere. In fact, there was a report from McKinsey & Company within the last year or two that says that 62% of businesses say that they are experimenting with AI agents. Like I referenced before, this can be both a threat and or an opportunity depending on where you're at, what your thoughts are, what industry you're in. I mean, there's a lot of different subjective factors here, right? But in the case of our conversation, assuming that you're service-based, you might very well be B2B yourself. This can be a threat for you. I'm going to throw some numbers here at you real quick so you don't think I'm just pulling this stuff out of the air. There was a report done by Goldman Sachs that estimated that 30% of engineering jobs would be automated, 44% in legal, 35% in accounting. Why are businesses even doing this at all? Well, it's because that productized companies are naturally going to be far more profitable than professional services. Productized companies typically have gross margins between about 60 to 90% versus 40% for those professional services. Even though there are higher upfront costs for that kind of product development, it's a lot quicker to not only scale and automate, but also recuperate back your initial investment. Getting that ROI back is going to be a whole lot quicker. That's a big, big part of the appeal for these kinds of companies and industries that are experimenting with AI. Now, this whole conversation, we're not focusing on AI here, but I'm just using that as kind of an entry point for the larger discussion that is this video. Additionally, as an example, revenue from B2B subscriptions are growing 5 times faster. I'm going to repeat that one more time. 5 times faster than their S&P counterparts based on the last 8 years. That's insane. Why? Well, it's easier to budget for. I don't personally like subscriptions. I would rather just pay something flat, even if it's higher, to own it outright, but owning things is really not a thing anymore. It's more of like you're paying for the licensing or you're paying for a subscription. Assuming we're sticking with the subscription model here, it's a lot easier to budget for companies. 72% of buyers actually prefer a sales rep free experience. I mean, even if you go to the grocery store, how many of those self-checkout aisles do you see? It's actually kind of crazy. Now, I'm not trying to freak you out with this video. I know that it can seem a little doom and gloom, but I had to get your attention, and we have to understand what kind of economic context we're laying in right now as far as entrepreneurship and business goes, right? But there is good news for you. People still really like buying from people, and this comes really, really in handy for those founder-led businesses. This could be boutique firms, this could be agencies, these could just be small teams. I don't know about you, but I've never really reacted well to like faceless businesses. I mean, there are exceptions out there, right? Like you've got Nike, you've got Patagonia, Coca-Cola. I mean, you know, that those are kind of the exceptions, and they're outside of the industries that we're talking about in this video. But 62% of consumers say that their purchasing considerations are driven by a company's ethical values and authenticity. And this came from a report all the way back from 2018. That's like 8 years ago. Even then, that kind of stuff mattered. This is prime opportunity here, right? Did I not say growth opportunity at the start of this video? Now, clearly there's a demand for this. There are plenty of opportunities for this, but we've got to dial in on what those opportunities look like. If I've caught your attention and you're interested, how do we capitalize on something like this? And not just capitalize on it, but do it strategically and intentionally so it doesn't feel like you're selling yourself out. That brings me to the second part of this video, the what. This is where we talk about that real life application and what that looks like. Now, when everyone's trying to get a piece of the pie, it's really easy for things to become very generic, such as coaching, maybe even fractionals. I would even pick on myself and say that marketing can be a very generic vertical nowadays. There has been this undeniable shift toward hyper-specific verticals, and I'm going to give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. And I got a list here that I'm going to look at. Data analytics for nonprofit managers, photography for real estate agents. I'm even going to use myself as an example. Product development for founder-led service-based businesses, baby. It really is true. The riches really are in the niches. And when everyone is trying to, like I said, get a piece of the pie, you've really got to know how to carve out that special little corner for yourself that's going to catch people's attention. So what is it that people are buying? This kind of goes back to what I was talking about before. These include online courses that cater to this kind of specificity, solving really particular kinds of problems or pain points or gaps in education. Templates and digital assets, ebooks and written guides. Some of these can even be premium, software as a service or other kinds of software-based tools, paid communities and memberships like masterminds or cohorts. And in fact, if you want to get a better understanding of the meat and potatoes, the number, the data, the statistics behind each of these examples, I'm going to list an article that does a very good job of explaining all of this. In fact, this video is based on 2 articles that I really did a deep scan of. So I'm going to leave them both below in case you want to dig a little bit deeper into the specifics around those. But basically, in case you don't want to read it, for the fastest cash surge, tools or templates are probably most likely going to be your best option. If you're in the long haul for long-term recurring revenue, that's generally where communities and memberships are going to come into play. In fact, I can prove this. I've got a very extensive case study on my website. If you go to onward.marketing/Steve-Sellengut, I'm also going to link that down below. We saw this. In fact, within 12 months of building this online community for someone who was very, very heavy in the financial services sector, we achieved about $15,000 in monthly recurring revenue, meaning that we built $100,000 plus online community during that time. Pretty impressive stuff. But how can we find that sweet spot? Well, those specific professional niches where buyers expense purchases or can see a direct ROI are going to be very, very attractive. I know that sounds very like aloof and ethereal. This can look like compliance training for legal services. This can look like Notion templates for e-commerce brands doing at least $1 million a year in annual revenue. Again, we're answering very specific questions, problems, and gaps in knowledge. And some of these verticals and niches might very well sound boring, but hey, if they work, don't mess it up, right? We're prioritizing the system here. We're getting people's questions answered, and we're trying to diversify our revenue here in the meantime and scale, because we like to scale, if that's a goal of yours. So if you're on board, if you're with me so far, how do we take all of this and actually put it in motion? How do we put action to all these thoughts and ideas? I'm so glad you asked, because that brings me into the third section of our video, talking about the how. How do I create this for myself? Now, I'm going to pull a quote real quick from an article linked down below called Insight Rater, and it says that most digital product ventures fail, not because the market is too small, but because creators pick the wrong niche, price too low, or quit before their product gains traction. Does this sound familiar at all? Have you experimented with different kinds of marketing avenues before? This might sound familiar. If not, we're going to dive into it anyway. This is all very, very preventable risk, right? So how do we navigate this? My personal approach to this is going private before public. I've talked about this before, and it's exactly what it sounds like. We want to go small before we go big, right? We want to mitigate risk. We want to protect our reputation. We want to protect our social capital. If you're someone who's in law, finance, nonprofits, leadership, any of those like really sensitive reputation-based, referral-based, relationship-heavy industries, this is really, really going to be applicable to you. Basically, what does it mean to go private before public? There's 3 things that this includes. Get your idea validated by those who matter most. Don't execute before you know for sure that there is interest that has been measured, that has been tracked. I like to do this through just general interest forums, getting in touch with any of your past clients, any of your current clients, anyone in your network that you think would be relevant, anyone who's very, very warm and very, very likely to say yes or support it in some other kind of way. Second thing is scoping that interest into something that is both sellable and scalable. Great, we've got the interest. Let's build something around that interest, because we know that when we sell it, there's already a ready and willing audience who's going to buy it because they told us that they were interested in it. Now, action and intention, those are 2 different kinds of meetings. Depending on when you're launching, people may be budgeting, end of the year, beginning of the year, holidays, all that stuff. There's lots of considerations, but we're just kind of going with the broad strokes here. Third thing is, once we've kind of got this MVP, this minimal viable product, good enough for the market, your private market that is, this is where we can soft launch and start collecting more of that data, more of that feedback, so that we can continue refining and developing over time, so that we can ultimately scale it, open up another stream of revenue for you, and be able to get more folks in your pipeline. So here's an example of this that I'm just kind of pulling from the top of my brain. I'm a project management consultant, let's say, who works with boutique agencies doing at least $5 million in annual recurring revenue, and I have an idea to package what I know into a productivity template with Notion to serve more teams at scale without eating up more of my time. I think that sounds really great. I think that sounds insanely specific, which for the work that I do makes my job a whole lot easier. If you know exactly what you want, oh my gosh, we can have so much fun. I might reach out to some of my closest colleagues with an invitation to reconnect. Hey, how's it going? It's been a minute. What's new with you? Here's what I'm working on. By the way, I'm working on doing this thing. I'm just gauging interest. Would you mind filling out this Google form or, this secure form so I can collect feedback? It's this new thing that I'm wanting to try out. I just don't want to build anything before I know that, people do or don't want it. And then maybe based on those responses, I might reach out to second tier folks in my network. Maybe these were almost clients, people who ghosted, who weren't a fit. There were budgetary constraints. I don't know if I have an extensive newsletter, something like that. You're just kind of working your way through your different network circles. You've got your first tier. That's likely anyone and everyone who's going to say yes because they know, like, and trust you. 3 magic words of marketing. Moving on to your second tier, continuing to prove that idea. And then maybe if you want third, fourth, fifth, I don't know how big your network is, but this is what it means to go private before public. We're gauging interest, building around that interest, and then doing a soft launch so that people buy it. And then with that revenue, that early stage revenue that you're getting in, you can reinvest it back into the product. So it's nothing out of your pocket. You're developing something with proven cash. And that feels good. That feels really good. So this whole video is to say that there is a new market that has been emerging, that's been blowing up over the last couple years. And this is how you can capitalize on it in a way that doesn't feel super salesy, that doesn't feel like you're cheapening yourself. It's all about, how can I take this thing that I do for a specific kind of person or kind of people or kind of business, package it up and sell it so that I don't need to constantly find my next lead and get my next calendar booked, because I've already got this system or product or tool over here that has an audience that's willing to buy from it. It's just another way to diversify your revenue. It's another way to engage with your audience. It's another way to just serve more people without eating up more of your time. This is kind of what I mean by like productized IP, or packaging your knowledge, or selling what you know. I mean, it might sound a little gimmicky, but the plain language is you're selling what you know. And remember, you do that by going private before public. So if you're interested in learning any more about this kind of stuff, hey, feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to reach out to me in an email. Feel free to visit my website, onwardboundmarketing.com. You're going to click on offers at the top. So that's really all I have for you. I hope you got something out of this video. I really enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. And if there's anything else that you would love for me to chat about on this channel or to cover more about in my content, please let me know. Otherwise, I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you around, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care until then. I'll see you later. Bye.